Today, we are going to answer the question, what are your thoughts on the Prolon diet? Ooh, okay. So first, let's talk about what it is. Theranos, Prolon, is the latest and greatest baby of biotech Silicon Valley, championed by a physician, Dr. Walter Longo, who's the director of the Longevity Institute at the University of Southern California. He's also the founder of El Nutra, which is the company that provided food for the clinical trial that's referenced on the Prolon website, and also was a part of the research team. So when you purchase a kit from Prolon, when you purchase a Prolon pack, essentially, you're getting art supplies to consume as sustenance for the next 5 days. I refuse to call this food. You may have a different opinion, but when you're consuming 700 to 1,000 calories for 5 days straight, your body will biochemically mimic starvation, right? So first of all, just saying that, I'm like, starvation sounds cool. Not at all. If maybe in 2021, this is sort of like 1999's version of fashionable, it sort of feels like the kind of thing that would wear a Chanel blazer and be like, I'm biochemically mimicking starvation. It's not cool. Nothing cool about starving. I don't feel good about it. I don't feel good about fasting as a means to starving. Those two things, they're interchangeable as far as I'm concerned, unless I'm totally missing something. I don't think so. Okay, let's talk about the claims being made about Prolon, both on their website and what I'm hearing a lot about on podcasts, on the internet, all over the place. It's really focused on this one claim that Prolon makes. It's a little bit different from other, well, it's not actually that different from other diets, which is that, if you do nothing else but just, 5 days of this fasting mimicking plan once a month and eat garbage for the rest of the days, the rest of the month, that you could possibly lose a few pounds and not gain them back. That you could also improve some biochemical markers of inflammation, which are C-reactive protein, blood glucose, IGF-1. But the fine print is pretty key on this one. The average amount of weight loss was 5.7 pounds, a little bit over than that, over 3 months. If you were to keep doing this indefinitely, though, and that is purchasing this kit so that you can mimic starvation for 5 days straight, that's a little bit over $2,200 to your grocery budget, right? Because presumably you need a grocery budget the rest of the days of the month. Okay, now let me first get into some of the pros, because there is one really big pro about Prolon that I want to give them credit for, which is that if I had to compare it to other types of fasting in which everyday humans willingly give up eating entirely, you do you, Sheila, I see you, but all right, I don't support it, but I get it. Then Prolon definitely wins, right? Because you at least get some calories in the form of powder and supplements and broth and a texturizing agent called glycerin that comes in packaged food form, and maybe like a cocktail olive or two, which is honestly a feast compared to what some of these other fasts promise and ask you to just kind of consume water and ice chips, right? So if if you are really looking to start something new, you can see why that would sound sort of motivating or like a plan that's worth trying, because you're not totally starving altogether. You're not just eating ice. You are getting something. But the thing is that in the clinical trial that's often referenced by Prolon, the biggest benefit was seen by the people who had the most weight to lose and who also had the most increased chronic disease risk indicators. So in other words, if you're feeling bloated from too much seaweed salad at Nobu, you're probably losing water weight when you try Prolon for 5 days, not necessarily, creating new, healthier patterns of eating that are going to help you lose weight and keep it off over time, right? So just something to think about. To Prolon's credit, if I am also thinking about what you might look for in a different type of plan or intervention or something that you have heard a lot of positive things about, there is this other factor, which is that, they have an actual study. A lot of these different types of hyped products online are often not substantiated. They're going off of other types of claims or things that have only been tested in test tubes or even in animals. And actually, there is one human clinical trial for Prolon, so that is also easily an important factor here. Why is it so popular? It's gaining huge traction right now, and I think a lot of that is that it sounds like a quick fix way to jumpstart, to lose weight fast and then keep it off by ultimately building in some of these other healthier habits that that you've been thinking about doing perhaps. But I also think there's something kind of sexy about the idea of it being formulated by a doctor. But remember that a doctor's job is to also treat, to prescribe in order to treat. And it's not their job to teach patients how to eat for better health and for weight management over time. That's my job. So I think that's important because the key physical and biochemical markers from cyclic fasting in Prolon's trial are the ones that other research has actually shown will get the same positive impact. You'll positively impact those same biochemical markers through inclusion of real whole foods more often. Veggies, fruit, whole grains, seafood, unsweetened dairy products, nuts, seeds, legumes, peas, lentils, chickpeas, beans. I've said those already, I think. I don't know. All right. What are the cons? There's really not enough research to fully stand behind this. And before you try to cancel me, although you can't really cancel me, with other clinical trials evaluating efficacy of fasting, Prolon's evaluating the efficacy of fasting compared to your personal normal baseline. That's what basically any trial is looking to do, right? Because they're looking to see the efficacy of the variable that they've introduced. They're not looking at how substantive or clinically relevant, meaningful this is in the context of everyday lifestyle or in other things that you could possibly do with your day, with your time, with your meal and snack prep. Okay. So I think that it's important to keep that in mind. Also, on the topic of longevity, it's true that there's some early hints at why this could be positively impactful for overall longevity. But the parameters of what makes a fasting diet in general aren't yet defined. They're not really clear. They're not clear for Prolon. I mean, they had this kind of regimented plan that mimics fasting for this 5-day time period. So they did have it for this one, which is why I do like it ultimately more than just trying random different types of time restricted or alternate day fasting routines. I think this one would definitely sound like a little bit safer to me. I would feel a little bit more secure by the idea that you at least get something, but I don't think there's enough in the area of fasting to say, yes, there's so much research on the longevity benefits or on the health benefits when there's way more substantial research there on the overall benefits of, let's say, a Mediterranean style of eating, which is highly inclusive, right? It's not telling you that you have to restrict. It's not telling you to cut out food for 5 days. It's really just all about inclusion. All right. So the other thing I want to just say before we wrap this up is that it's really fucking hard. 25% of the study participants for the clinical trial that Prolon often references is they tested the fasting mimicking diet and versus 10% in the control arm. So let me just say that again. 25% of the study participants who tested the fasting mimicking diet dropped out of the trial versus only 10% who dropped out in the control arm. In case you missed it, consuming enough calories to survive is really not for the faint of heart. But I think that's really important. And it's actually something that the researchers themselves bring up in this trial, right? So they talk about this in the discussion, which is that what else is happening in someone who has made this decision for themselves that they're going to stick with it at all costs for the duration of a clinical trial period. What else are they doing in their lives? Like they've got to be really motivated to want to do that, right? So they've got to be really, really dedicated to the idea of taking steps toward healthier habits in the rest of their everyday. Now, the trial asked the participants to try not to change anything else about their everyday eating habits and their lifestyle. But you can only imagine that someone who has stuck with it for that amount of time to do something very hard, to do something very challenging from a psychological standpoint, that they might be doing other things in their everyday lifestyle automatically without even really realizing it, that might have an impact on them starting to create those healthier habits, and therefore making it that much more sustainable to actually keep the 6 pounds or so off in that period of time. All right. So the bottom line is, I would encourage anyone considering Prolon to first consider what actually feeling healthier really means to you, on a personal level, with your energy level, with your lifestyle, with the other everyday demands of your lifestyle, before you hand over a credit card, please. I think that doing things like this, like these cycles of eat whatever you want and then restrict for 5 days. This is a binge restrict cycle that just begets more weight cycling, more psychological distress and despair, frankly. I mean, it could have a serious impact on you long term, although, there's no research to support that, because there's really no long-term research on this. But I would say that anything that asks you to restrict for both a period of time or the total amount of calories that you eat in a day in such a dramatic way, such as this 700 to 1,000, that could be a meal, that could be a Starbucks beverage. So I think it's important to just keep that in mind. I also do think that doing anything extreme for the sake of outcome measures, like just numbers, really reduces you to something that you're not, which is just a statistic, right? Like, you're a whole person, you're a human being. What does it mean to be in good health for you? And what does that actually look like? I think, your goal in trying this like biotech box of wonders is not necessarily going to be being reduced to an outcome measure. I think that's probably true of anyone who's looking for something to help them start, or to help them kind of recalibrate or get ready to start a next phase of their lifestyle that looks a little bit more like taking care of themselves. So that's really important to keep in mind, right? If you're someone who is seeking different ways to start taking care of yourself, I would say start with things that feel inclusive to you, and start by taking a good look at your own personal lifestyle. What does feeling healthier really look like and feel like and sound like? And what is the lifestyle of feeling healthier for you going to be like, so that you can start setting yourself up to make those choices on a daily basis? All right. So bottom line, quick recap. If you like subsisting on garnishes and cocktail olives, maybe this is for you. I'm not a fan of the idea of it. But I appreciate you guys spending some time with me today. That's going to do it for our time together right now. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate all of your support. Please go and check out the episode with the answer to the Prolon Q&A, which is live on the podcast, on the On the Side podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And I will see you next time. Thank you.